Hi everyone, and welcome to the final instalment of this mammoth project to KITBASH and put a full interior into Tamiya's classic Panzer II Ausf F in 1/35 scale. Now, in this longish video, we're going to be looking at all the aspects of OPR weathering, but more on that. So if that's something of interest to you, then pull up a chair and let's go do some modelling. Now, first off, I just want to pay my respects to Mr. Tamiya. As you know, this is my 10th anniversary build. I've been building kits now for 10 years, and the very first 3 kits I ever did were Tamiya ones, and obviously I've done a few since as well. So my blessings to Mr. Tamiya and everything that he's done for our hobby. Now, looking at pigments, as you know, if you follow my work, that I do a variety of different pigments to make up one batch of pigments. Here we are going to be doing obviously sand coloured ones. So we've got a few yellowish ones, a few dust coloured ones. And I'm going to make up 2 batches, one that's going to be pretty light and dusty and one that's going to be slightly more yellow. I have no particular make that I prefer. I just like pigments altogether. What I will say here though is that I do like this one here, which is the rubble pigment, because this actually leaves little white specks now and again, which I think is quite a nice little effect. So once you've chosen all of your pigments, coarse and thin, just put them into a container, mix them up, and once you've got the shade that you're after, as you can see here, the one on the right is slightly more yellow. We can then start applying it onto the model itself. Now, this is very much a dry mix. What I'm trying to do here is to tone down the grey effects. And what we do is go over the whole of the model. Try not to sneeze as you're doing this, because otherwise you lose it all. And then we'll get some Tamiya lacquer thinner. And what we're going to do, we're going to fix this into place by the use of a splattering technique. Now, I have a strong, short bristled brush that I use, and using the Tamiya stirrer, as you can see, I'm just flicking it on and then letting it spread out, and then that will seal the pigments into place. Now, again, this isn't all of the pigment work, but this is part of the layering process. And as you can see now, we're starting to get that nice dusty look all over the model. Now, as far as the lower hole goes, we're going to be slightly more precise. So we're going to get ourselves a nice bushy brush, and we're going to start putting the pigments into place. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to fix it in the same way. And then once that's done, allow that to dry. And then we'll start going in with the different shade and going slightly more thicker. Now, I don't want to do a massive build-up, but there was obviously rain in the desert, so there would have been a little bit of build-up of dirt and dust along the lower hull there. So those are the photos showing you how the final effect looked, and I was really pleased with how that had turned out. Now, I did some on the back of the rear idlers as well, and what I wanted to do is to try and get a nice chunky crack look. So what I did was to put it in quite thickly, and then add a lot of fixture, as you can see here with the pipette, and that managed to create that cracked glazed look. So allowing that to dry out fully, as you can see, we've got that nice sort of clumpy mud effect that you would see on the back of wheels. And obviously, as far as the actual wheels go themselves, the road wheels, they had the same process as the main hull, and of course the turret as well. And then with all that sealed, that now sets me up to do some OPR, some oil paint rendering. I'll go into more detail later in the video, but just initially just show you the setup with the palette and the oils, the different application brushes and the thinners, and obviously the tissue. Now, first off, we used it on the tracks. Again, the tracks, they received their dust coating, again fixed in the same way. And now we're just going to use some of that burnt umber oil just to give it a slightly darker effect here and there. Possibly give a little bit of a rust look, a little bit of rust there in the desert with the hard wearing. And then I went over with the graphite pencil just to show the wear on the ridges and on the pins. And all in all, I was really pleased with how they turned out. Pretty realistic, I thought. And they'll look good on the tank once done. Now, before I actually put on the wheels, etc. on the lower hull, I'll just do a little bit of OPR. Here I'm just using the lighter colours. As you know, you go from light to dark. We're just putting a little bit of a dust wash on first. Once that was all blended out, I then started to do some little detailing around. For example, here, this is where the fuel goes in on the top there, and obviously there would have been some seepage down the sides of the tank and underneath to the chassis. So that's being represented here with the darker colours, and then obviously blended in to give that nice effect. Again, later in the video, we'll go into more detail. The support wheels, they had a little pin wash. We did some more OPR on the front sprockets as well, front and back, because you can see the detail on the back as well. And then those rear idlers, they came out really nice and certainly look the part now on the back of the Panzer. Some of the road wheels, I did a little bit of oil seepage, not too much. And then obviously the rims where it's in contact with the tracks, I used a silver pencil there and you get that nice glint. Now, as you can see, the oil board's been heavily used. And what I do now is to set out the palette with my lights, my darks and my greys. And as you can see, I've been mixing those up. We also have a couple of pots of thinner, one for the dirty brush and one for the cleaning brush. We also have different blenders, applicating brushes as well, and also some streaking brushes. Then we have the famous Tamiya stirrers, and this will be used for speckling effects. And then obviously your towels to offload any excess. Now I'm going to do the full Monty showing you how OPR works using the actual turret itself. And here what we're going to be doing is the layering process, another layer of the oils. And what we're trying to do is to create that feeling of time. So what we do first is to clean off the model part. Here we're using the thinner. Just to forewarn you, this is going to be an all warts and all. So you're going to see all of my mistakes, all of the problems that I encounter as I go through the weathering stages and how we can cope with that. So like I said earlier, this is going to be a bit of a lengthy video, and I will try and chat as much about OPR as I can as we go through the process. But here what I'm doing, I'm mixing up 2 or 3 of the dust colors, using the yellower one as the base and then adding darker ones to it. As far as my oils go, I use Winsor & Newton and Abteilung primarily. Then once I've got the mixture I want, I just offload it onto the towel. And then we're going to actually apply it in a little bit of a wash over the top of the storage bin. Now, the most important thing is to get your reference photos so you know where you need to apply your lights and your darks to create that realistic look. And here we're just going to be applying it around the edges. And this will be done with the applicator brush. And then with the blending brush, as you can see, I mark them with Tamiya tape so I know the difference. We can just blend that in and create that first initial dust layer. Because as you know, we go from dark to light. And that's all blended in really nicely. There's no thinner at all on the blending brushes, as you've obviously got the thinner from when you first cleaned it, as well as the when you put the actual oils on. So there's plenty on the model, so there's no need to add any more. And then that will all blend in nicely, doing your downward streaks as well as the blending on the horizontal planes. And then in between every layer, use the hairdryer to dry the oil layer out. Don't get too close and don't get too hot, otherwise you will be melting that plastic. So now I'm going to go for a slightly darker dust layer. Here we're going to be somewhat more precise. There's going to be less thinner on the brush. and we're going to do a little bit of speckling effects. So just put a little bit on the back of the Tamiya stirrer, and away we go. Don't go too overboard, but if there's any that you don't like, we can adjust that. So on the top there, as you can see, that was a bit of a thick spot, so we'll just blend that one out. And again, adds character, adds that impression of time. And then what I'm doing here is some of the speckles that are on the side, just very gently dragging them down, and that creates a really nice effect. So with that done, what we're going to do now is to move on to the side, and it's going to be the same sort of process. So as I go through the same stages, I just want to have a little chat about oil paint rendering, OPR. The use of oils with weathering. It's been championed by Mike Rinaldi for many years now. He's a famous author with his tank art books and more recently his scale model books. And what Mike likes to teach us is to create that idea of time, create the layering process, integrate the pigments in with the oils, and that way you create a realistic look. The importance of using reference material. It's incredible, the photos, etc., that he has, and you can really use those photos and the books to give you an idea of what the actual real look should be. Now, while I've been rambling, you'll see I've made a bit of a cock up here. I've applied far too much oil, but the good thing about it is that you can blend it out. You can go back in with pure thinner and take it off. What I will say though is once you have applied any type of oil onto your model, it's always going to leave some sort of mark, whether it's faint or whether it's dark. So always bear that in mind. But oils are very, very adaptable, and you can change it up whenever you want. You can do it after 2 or 3 days if you're not happy with the way you look, but obviously the longer you leave it, the harder it will be. So as you can see there, I've managed to take most of that oil off now. I've managed to blend it back down, and now as you can see, it's not as severe. So never ever panic. We always have happy accidents, as Bob Ross used to say. So I've decided to leave that side a little while now, just to let it dry out naturally. So in the meantime, I've now come round to the other side, and I'm going to behave myself now and not put so much oil on. And then we're going to blend that out. And what I'm now obviously doing is adding the darker layers, using the burnt umbers, the Van Dyke browns, that sort of thing, just to give that sort of dirtier type of look. Now, what I will say about Mike, as I said, he is well known for being an author. He is actually bringing out a comprehensive OPR guide over the coming months. So certainly keep an eye out for that. But obviously in his tank art books, all of this is all explained. He also has a very good YouTube channel as well, where there's a lot of his projects there. You can see all of this, see how the master does it. And if you're so inclined, he also has a Patreon page and Discord channel, and you can come and join us all there and see his work. So this was coming on really well. Sort of managing to blend everything together now, all of those darks and all of those light colours, and sort of making it look a lot more realistic. Just add a little bit of thinner there where I'd forgotten to put some on. It's always a lot harder doing it in front of camera. When I'm off camera, it's a lot quicker, a lot easier to do. But it's always beneficial to see other people do this type of work, and then that gives you an idea of how you can do it yourself with the using of oils as part of your weathering process. As I said earlier, Mike's very much keen with the layering process and introducing pigments within the OPR process, and that, as you could see, was what I did initially. putting down the pigment layers, and then adding on the oils and the OPR afterwards. But it's very, very important that you make sure that you always have the dry surface. Make sure that you use your hairdryer in between each layers, because otherwise you're just going to be mixing all the different colors together, and it's not going to look as good as it should. So doing a little bit of rain streaking coming down. Not a fan of doing a great deal of this, but here and there it does make a nice feature on the model. Again, continually checking my references. Offloading and then reloading, blending the dark colors together. Now here we have Payne's Grey. It's a little bit crusty since I last used it. That's one other thing. You don't have to keep making fresh palettes up. This palette is coming to the end, I grant you, but I've been using this palette for about a month. So what you do is to keep it in the fridge for storage when you're not using it. And then when you do come to use it again, just reactivate it, the oils as I did there, by breaking the top crusty bit, possibly putting a little bit of thinner on top of it as well, and it will be as good as new. So what I'm doing, I'm adding a bit of the Payne's Grey to the dark Panzer Grey, again, just to give it a little bit of contrast here and there, and then we're very gently blending it all in. If you look at my brushes there, it's very important you get ones which have a nice sharp point to them, and this allows you to add on that nice detail. Always go back on what the work that you've already done, just to keep blending. Before you pack up your bench, you always make sure that everything has been fully blended on the model, because otherwise it will make life a lot harder if you try and do it the following day. And now we're going to add some speckling effects. So here we're going into the Van Dyke Brown and the War Umber on the back of the Tamiya stir, and just very gentle. And because this is a dark colour, we don't want to be doing a great deal, because otherwise it will overpower the surface. So just a few drops here and there. There we go, give you a little close up before we get the hairdryer on. As you can see, it's still quite gleaming, so there's plenty of thinner on the surface, so when blending there's no need for you to add any more. Now, I'm not this isn't the same video again, because it's all dried out, because we've used the hairdryer. We can go back in again with the thinner without disturbing those other layers, because now we can now prepare the surface, and now we're going to start blending in using the darker colors again. So again, the mixture of the two. On this build, I did start doing a little bit of the raw sienna as well. The raw sienna is more of a reddish brown, gives the impression of rust. I'm not a great fan of the rusty look on my models, but with this particular case, with the harshness of the desert conditions, I thought it was worthwhile just doing a little bit here and there. And as you'll see from the final pictures, I thought it looked quite realistic, so I was really pleased with how that comes out. So again, same process with the dust colors. Again, you have to be very careful with the dark colors, because it can quite easily overpower the work that you've done. So in this case, less is certainly more. And we want to try and create some of the shadows, highlight where the dirt would congregate, sort of around the ridges, around hinges, that sort of thing. And then you can also do, as I've done there, some in the middle of the larger areas, give the impression of footprints possibly, and just that general dirt accumulating. By the way, if you have a look in the description of this video below, I'll put all of Mike Rinaldi's links to all of his pages, etc., so you can go check him out. You'll notice the jig that I'm using. It's a very handy little jig, especially for the smaller items. It does struggle with the bigger stuff, but for the small things like the turrets and figures, etc., it's a nice little jig, and you can pick it up on Amazon quite cheaply. I think it's about 20 quid, something like that. So now, as you saw there, I was just started to add a little bit of that raw sienna to give that sort of slightly little dusty look. And then we'll tuck that away in the darkest of each corner. Right, while I'm doing the stowage box, I'll let you watch that while I take a swig of water. As you can see now, I'm actually holding the two brushes in the same hand. Really, that's just a speed thing. If this is your first attempt at it, and you want to be a little bit more precise, then just put one down and use the one brush as you go. You'll also notice that I've chopped my brushes right down as well, because I'm not a fan of the long handled brushes. Now, I haven't timed it, but I think altogether this probably took about half an hour, maybe 3/4 of an hour, which is pretty quick as far as a weathering process goes. Personally, I find it a lot more easier to do once mastered, and a lot more effective than the bog standard, just going around doing pin washes and filters and everything else that some companies get you to buy. This way is a lot cheaper, for me, a lot easier, and as far as I'm concerned, a lot more realistic process to weather your vehicles with. So again, just trying to create that illusion of maybe the water coming down from those stowage lid clasps. Don't want to go too overboard with that, but just gives you that impression. And now we're coming down to the final side of the stowage bin. And then we'll just finish off on the blending. Now, it's difficult to see what the final look, so you do have to trust yourself. It's not until the oils have dried out fully that you actually get the full benefit of the work that you've actually done. But that will come with experience. And now we're returning to that final side, which I made a bit of a hash of. And again, we're using the thinner to prepare the area. And again, we're now going to start targeting the ridges, shadow areas, and the recesses. Now, obviously, like everyone else, I have a busy life. There are times when I can maybe you can only do this for sort of 10 minutes to half an hour. So the great thing is if you do it like a panel at a time or a small area at a time, go straight from the dust to the speckling to the darker dust to the speckling to the darker colours, etc. And then when you come back to it, maybe in the 2 or 3 days, you can see and remind yourself of the work that you've already done, and then you can move on to the next smaller section and repeat that process rather than doing the whole model in dust and then go back and do the whole model in speckling. You just would not get the proper effects that you can do when you do it just a small area at a time. So here again, I'm just adding on some of that Payne's grey. You have to be very careful because obviously we don't want the grey to bleed out onto the lighter sand colours. So the application here is very precise, and also the blending is very precise as well. And yes, I was using the hairdryer in between each stage. Again, the great thing about oils is as you go around, if there's anything you feel you've missed, forgot to blend, or you may want to add, you can just go back and do it. And here we're just blending in that Payne's grey. And again, we're going to add some of the speckling effects. You can see I'm quite a distance away from the model when doing it, and obviously we don't want to go over the top. And the same with the dust colors. If there's any spots that you don't like, just blend it out. And obviously on the vertical planes, just try and drag some of them down to add those nice effects. And here we're using the rake brush, which is a handy one to drag and to create those nice effects. Just feathering it down, hardly touching the surface. And that creates that nice little effect. The stowage bin so close to where they fill up with fuel, it could have splattered up quite easily. And that's what OPR is all about, telling a story, creating the illusion of time on your models. So now we're going to do the front of the turret and also the top of the turret. Now, you don't want to hear me rambling on the same old thing, so I'll just leave you to watch this. And if need be, I'll interject now and again if there's anything relevant to say. But this is just reinforcing the work that I've already done on the sides and the stowage bin. You'll notice here how lightly I'm touching the surface. Um, what we had here was probably a little bit too much thinner on there. So while it dries out, what I don't want to do is to go in too heavy, because otherwise that would not create a nice effect. And again, we're using the rake brush here just to blend that out. So again, it just shows the versatility of the oils. Even if when you do make a mistake, if you're careful enough, you can pull it back, no problem at all. As you can see now, as this is slightly more of a tricky area to do, I no longer have the two brushes in one hand, and I'm actually applying, putting the brush down, and then using the blender to come out. Now this blender isn't as precise. I basically have two types of blender. I have one with a very pointy end where it can be absolutely exact, and this one where it's a bit more of a fluffy blender, and that allows you to blend out the color out into a larger area. Now, if you remember at the start, I showed you quite a few brushes that I was using. There does come a time during this process where the applicator is either too wet, I've used it too many times. Same with the blender, picked up too much oil, or again is too wet to use. So I'll probably go through maybe two or three sets of two brushes each time I'm at the bench doing a session. So it's always handy to have a few to hand when doing the OPR. So with the front mantlet done, now we can do the final stage, which is obviously going to be the top of the turret. Here we're putting the initial cleaning area of thinner on. Now what you'll also find by the end of this is that I do not touch the top of the coupler at all. I was really pleased with the way it looked. The burnishing effects of the mission model paint made it really nice and shiny, which is obviously representative of the crew and obviously the tank commander continually using and rubbing the top of the coupler. So there was no need to dust it or dirty it up. And this is a key element of the OPR, the all paint rendering system, is that you do not have to do the whole model. There are many areas that you can leave that don't need to be weathered, and they work well together, having the non OPR as well as the OPR looks together. I've just added a little bit of the raw sienna, the dust, the rust effect look there, because that's the rain gully, and obviously that will probably get a little bit more rusty than some of the other areas. But from what I remember, that's probably the only two places on the turret that I actually used any type of rust effect. Now I'm getting into the weld seams, because they do get quite dirty, and then just blending that out. You'll also notice here that Mike always teaches not to do pin washes per se, but to actually paint in any of the dirt or the grime around sort of rivet and bolt heads, and then blend it out. If you see a model which has been pin washed, it's very uniform. It all looks the same, whereas in reality, it's quite the different thing. So that's one of the advantages of the OPR system, is that you can actually paint in, so to speak, the grime and the dirt around nuts and rivets, etc., and not necessarily just do a pin wash, a uniform pin wash over the whole of your model. And as always, the obligatory splattering effects. You'll also notice that I didn't do any dust effects on the top layer. Um, I didn't feel that there was a need, because obviously this is going to be used a lot by the crew to get in and out, as you can tell with the worn away paint effects, which I'm just currently toning up there with panes grey. So there was no dust on the top as well. And again, it just goes to show that the OPR is a very flexible. It's not a rigid system, um, and you can do it in any way that you see fit, to the model, to the conditions, to the time that you're trying to impart on your model. But just a gentle reminder there to use your hairdryer in between levels. Now, what doing here is I've used a little bit of yellow ochre. What I'm trying to do is just to bring back a little bit of that Dunkelgelb here and there on the model, again, so it's not a uniform color throughout, that you do get that contrast. Um, Being very gentle, being very precise. I don't want to do a great amount, because it can overpower the model. But when you have a look in the final photos, you'll just see a little bit discolorization here and there, and that just adds more to the effects. as you can see, continually blending as I go. And there we have it, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed that, what I'd say is a little mini tutorial on the use of OPR on your models. Obviously, I've then gone on and done the rest of the model using the same processes. And this is the end result. So really pleased with how this model has turned out. It's certainly been a few months getting it to this stage, but I hope you've enjoyed everything from the scratch building all the way through to the OPR. So that just leaves me to say a massive thank you to all of my subscribers, old and new. I've had a lot of support for this particular build, and I really do appreciate your comments as we've gone along. So all that leaves me to say is happy modelling.